Work. Yeah. All right. Appreciate you, buddy. All right. Okay. So I ask God. I pray a lot, and I ask Him, and for different things. And a lot of time, His response to me is, well, "What are you doing about it?" And the reason He responds to me that way, because He always follows it up with, "I've given you the Holy Spirit. I've given you everything that you need. I've given you the keys to the kingdom, and the gates of hell will not prevail over you. So what are you doing about it?" So when I share whatever I share with you guys here in a little bit, you need to do something about it. It's in your court. The ball is being tossed to you, and if something goes on inside of you, you need to make things right. Nobody else in here can do that for you but you. And like I said, it's on you. And so, okay. So let me go back to and God said that He would be a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. And the steps of the righteous are numbered by God. And I thought that I was supposed to share this the morning of the movie, no electric here, and then it just never happened until now. And then I believe right now is exactly when I'm supposed to share this with you. So this was a few years ago that this happened. So anyways, I was working on the well house out at the farm, and I put in a new toilet, whatever, and I needed a supply line. And the next day, that was on maybe a Saturday, maybe Monday, I had to go to Clarksburg. So I went to Clarksburg. I went to the Lowe's in Clarksburg, and I needed a certain line, and they didn't have it. So I'm frustrated, and I'm like, I was already there working, so I'll stop at Home Depot. So when I went to Home Depot, I went in there and went back to the plumbing, and the guy came up to me. And I'm very observant of everybody. I pay attention to people when I talk to people, because it's very important to look in people's eyes. Well, I noticed he had a trach, or had a trach at one point. So anyways, I was like, "Hey man, I'm looking for this certain line." And he's like, "Yeah, it's right here." Well, they had it. And I was like, and I said, "Man," I said, I don't want to offend you or anything, but you got a story with that?" Because I work in hospitals. I know what a trach is. And he said, "Do you got a few minutes?" I said, "I got all day." I said, "Just tell me what. So what's the story?" So anyways, so this guy lives in Morgantown, and he drives down to Clarksburg Home Depot every day. Well, a few years before that, he was driving down there one morning, and a car came across the highway, across the median, and hit him head on. Literally decimated him. And just wrecked his life. Anyways, he should have died at the scene. He didn't. The other driver died. But anyway, so from what he considered his normal life, literally took a tragic change in a split second. When you ever hear a preacher, anybody says you don't know what tomorrow holds, you never know what the next 5 minutes. We don't know an hour from now. The trumpet may sound. I have no idea. But anyway, so he gets hit head on. Don't remember anything. And anyways, he ends up in the hospital. And I think it was a couple weeks until he was unconscious for weeks and finally came to. And anyways, so it paralyzed him from the waist down. And anyways, and he was a mess. To the point where up at Ruby, they called him Lazarus, because he died numerous times in that hospital, and they brought him back to life. So anyways, this guy's a mess. And his name's Rob Colombo. So anyways, so through this process of his legs not working and all this, his wife ended up leaving him. Just all kinds of stuff happened. I mean, just one after another. And here he's laying in the hospital. He ended up going to nursing homes and rehab. And through all of this, he was literally laying there, and he wanted to die. He's like, "Why am I still alive? What purpose do I have?" So anyways, he ends up finally, he done rehab and all kinds of stuff. His back ended up healing, and he can walk now. God restored him. But anyways, through all that, his wife ended up leaving, just a whole bunch of stuff. So anyways, after he finally gets rehabbed and gets back home, he comes back to his home, and he's contemplating suicide numerous times, because he has no reason why I should even live. So anyway, so he goes and talks to a friend of his that's a preacher, and he tells him, he said, what do you think? And the preacher said, have you talked to God about this? And he said, not really, because that's the one that I'm mad at. This wasn't supposed to happen this way. Like my life, I was just going to work. Why did everything get flipped upside down and this and that? And the preacher told him, said, have you ever thought of just sitting down and talking to God about this whole situation and letting him know what everything that you just told me? And anyways, the guy told him, the preacher said, listen, he said, take 2 chairs. And he said, take the one chair and you sit in it. And he said, take the other chair and you point it right towards you. And he said, and you talk to that. And he said, you talk to him and you tell him exactly what you want to tell him. And Rob's like, what's it going to hurt? So anyways, so he goes home and he does that. He sets 2 chairs down and he said, man, I let him have it. He said, I let him have it. He said, I cussed, I screamed, I kicked. And he said, I was yelling and screaming. And he said, after that went on for a while, he said, I actually started getting tired. And God said, are you done? And he said, so at that point, he said, that's when I started to listen. He said, I haven't listened in a while. He said, but what he told me, he said, I listened clearly. And he said, Rob, he said, go back to the scene of the accident. He said, you go back there and he said, you remember this. And I don't know if he remembered this or if God brought this to his remembrance, but he said, do you remember, he said, when you were in that car and that car was completely mangled. And he said, and that other driver's car was completely mangled. He said, do you remember in that car? And I knew you were unconscious. Do you remember being all mangled up in that car? And do you remember that really, 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 really good looking guy that walked up to the side of the car and was looking in the car? He said, do you remember that guy? And Rob's like, yeah. And he goes, and didn't you remember that bright light that showed up? Jesus showed up right after that and literally walked up and looked in the car and he said, this one right here is mine. This one right here is mine. And that was that man's soul right there. And anyways, and he wrote a book, and I was actually at the Home Depot in Clarksburg a week before that book came out on Amazon. So he's telling me all this, and man, I'm eating this up. And he said, I don't have all the answers. And he said, and I don't understand what went on. He said, but that one thing I do know, that I was sealed, that I was blood bought, and God saved me. And the enemy tried to come and steal my soul. And he said, and God reminded him every bit of this. And he said, in that moment, I literally melted in that chair. And he said, and there's nobody in the other chair, but God was in my house, and he explained every bit of this. And he said, but anyways, so what I'm going to tell you, in the ancient Roman times, where's my water at? In the ancient Roman times, if you murdered somebody, they would take that person's corpse and they would put on your back and they would strap that to your back to where you could not get that body off of you. And what would happen is the infection from that dead corpse would literally go into your body and it would kill you too. That was the punishment for it. And it was a law that if you tried to help that person, get that person off of their back, they would kill you. They would murder you. The government would kill you for that. So anyway, this is what I'm going to tell you. Dead things will kill you. That's what I need to say. Dead things will kill you. And I don't know what you battle with. I have no idea, but I do know dead things will kill you. I do know that sometimes and listen, we aren't victims. We are a weapon. And every time that we get cut, that weapon becomes that much sharper. We are not a victim, but you have to do something about it. I was running a chainsaw yesterday, and I know the long bar on my one saw. I know I don't even really have to bend my knees down very far, but I'll start cutting on that, Dennis. And I know not to dip that chain in the dirt, because if you do that, it will dull it. There's things that the enemy has done to come along and dull us, and that we are a weapon, but there's a lot of weapons out there that are dull, and they do nothing they have no power. They're just a dull weapon. You have to keep that thing sharp. But listen, and I believe with all my heart that there's things that happen. And Cheryl, I mentioned this to you the other day during revival, that sometimes the enemy will come and cut us. And if you don't do something with that cut will go from a cut to being an infection. And then that infection will turn into gangrene. And next thing you know, it will kill you if you do not deal with it. Dead things will kill you. I believe that there's things that we deal with that we've swept underneath the rug and haven't done anything with them. and they're still underneath the rug. You have to pull that rug up and literally sweep it in a dustpan and throw it outside and get rid of it, because dead things will kill you. Whatever, like I said, whatever, when I'm talking, whatever comes to your mind, you have to do something about it. And whether it's religion will kill you. Dead things will kill you. I don't care if it's maybe a conversation that you had with a person or a conversation you need to have with a person. It has to be dealt with, because right now we're at the edge of the Red Sea, and if the water don't part, we can't go nowhere. And in order for each one of us, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And if any of you guys are dealing with something that is dead on the inside of you, listen, because God made us in His likeness and His image, and God speaks life into dead things. There's things that God has delivered us from that we will actually resurrect. There's sins that I struggled with when I was a kid that I haven't struggled with in years, and I find myself present day trying to resurrect life back into them. I'm trying to breathe life into something that's dead, that God already delivered me from. But like I said, if you have and listen, this won't go away until you deal with it. It will not go away. It's the elephant in the room, and every day you wake up and you just realize, man, there's an elephant in the room, but if I don't address it, I won't have to do anything about it. So I come to tell you today, today is the day of salvation. Today is the day to be delivered from whatever is holding you down and binding you from going to the other side. Because like the church, I know the church has a lot of things going on, and it's like at a standstill. And I always heard that if you're not going forward, you're going backwards. There is no standing still. We're just going backwards. But like I said, guys, if there is something going on, something you've dealt with, whether you need to get a chair out, put a chair in front of you, you need to come to the altar, maybe it's God. Maybe you're mad at God like the way Rob was. He was mad. And I tell you one thing, when you're mad, you don't hear anything. I know there's times where I'll say something to Brianna that makes her mad, and she just shuts down. And she's not hearing the next thing that I'm saying. Because like I said, and I believe that God speaks the same volume the whole time. I don't believe He yells. I don't believe He whispers. I think He speaks the same the whole time. But what I do think is He gave us the remote. And that we can either turn the volume up or we can turn the volume down. But I'm telling you, you got to hear clearly from Him. And if He is speaking to you about dealing with something that is dead in your life, maybe it's friends, maybe whatever it is that you need to get shucked off of you so you can continue to go. Last night, I heard the fan in our bedroom was making a different noise. I told Brianna, I said, kind of sounds like the Jetsons mobile. It's like, brrr. And I'm like, I know we've had that fan for 12 years. She curses it every night, but it's still alive. Because how can blessings and curses come out of the same mouth? They're not coming out of the same mouth, because she's speaking curses and this mouth is speaking blessings. Lord, bless that fan. But I heard this fan making this weird noise, and I'm like, you know what? I'm like, it just made that noise. So anyways, I turned it off and I looked at it. And there was a little bit of lint had got on each one of the blades. And each one of them blades was causing back pressure on the fan motor, and the motor was struggling. Right now, I believe there's some lint has got on your blades and not making you as sharp as you once were. And yeah, you may maybe make a little noise, but you're not making as much noise as what you once did, because dead things will kill you. Whatever is going on inside of your heart, just deal with it. Just deal with it the best way you see fit. And sometimes it's just like, God help me, and He will. But you have to acknowledge the elephant in the room, and whatever it is that is you're struggling with, or whatever it is that needs restored, or whatever, you got to talk to God about it. You have to. Or maybe you need to go talk to the person. Or maybe the person isn't here, and maybe you just sat down in a chair and just talk it out. But one thing I learned in life, one thing I've learned, when you address something, consider it done and move on. Whatever is done is done. It's in the past. So it's just like a scab. When you get cut, you don't ever just let it heal for 6 days and then rip the scab off because you want it to heal. So whatever you deal with today, and like I said, guys, whatever you need to deal with, make it happen today, because it's like the night of the living dead. People are just walking around dead people alive. And I was that way once, but I'm alive and alive forevermore. And I will never be that way again, because whatever the devil throws at us, we are more than conquerors through Christ who strengthens us. But like I said, whatever you deal with today, whatever conversation you need to have, make it happen, and then consider it done. And don't ever revisit it. Don't bring it up. The devil brings it up. Just rebuke it and just keep on going, because I've already been delivered from that. I've already been healed of that. I will never bring that up again, because that's what the enemy, that love covers a multitude of sins, and love does not keep track of rights and wrongs. So if you in the future bring this up, you're the only person bringing it up, because God is, and it's already been taken care of. So like I said, you want to get a song Whatever you're dealing with, or Abby can say, whatever you're dealing with, guys, I'm telling you, dead things will kill you. And whatever you're holding on to, just let it go. Just deal with it today and move on. Maybe somebody's hurt you. Maybe somebody hurt you really bad and they're not here that you can have that conversation. But in order to be delivered, you need to have that conversation. Maybe you can't have it with them, but maybe it's for you to be delivered, and what they do with it, it's on them. They have to deal with that. But to whom the Son sets free is free indeed. And if you want to be set free from whatever you're dealing with, just come to the altar, pray, or whatever. Stand up. It does not matter, but just deal with it. It's on you to deal with that. Nobody else can do it. Like I said, when I pray a lot to God, I'm like, God, do something about this. And He said, if anybody needs to move, it needs to be you. So I just praise God and just